Carlos,
Ready?
good morning to you, sir.
Morning.
Um, how is life for you these days, Mister? I do 10,000 things at one time.
It's really good. I'm working from home, as most people are these days. And it's funny that you say doing 10,000 things at once. Over the last probably couple of years, I've really learned to focus, and that's kind of been my own personal challenge.
Hmm.
Is how do I focus down and be more effective instead of feeling like I have to do everything. So that's been an interesting journey.
How did you do that? Let's back up. So,
Yeah.
Carlos, you and I, for everybody out there, you and I have worked together on helping grow Tulsa, Oklahoma's entrepreneurial ecosystem, going way back. You've been instrumental in helping support the technology advancements and data collection and just thinking about technology more meaningfully from the city. And then you're an author. You develop and design websites, and you're working with CAP, which helps people understand more. It's research around helping people understand more about their communities and how to make more resilient, stronger communities. Did I get that right?
Yep.
I'll quit there. I know there's more. How did you get there, and how did you focus? Because this is something we keep. I gave a lesson on focus the other day on how I do it, and what did you do? How that's a lot to take on.
It is, it was almost a situation where I had to kind of really do a lot of soul searching and really look at my identity. And I was always known around town, or known in the design circles that I ran in, or the technology circles that I've run in, as the guy who does everything, right? The guy who's on every board, the guy who's volunteers for every organization, the guy who just always says yes to every project. And so when I started cutting back, it really, you really have to do a lot of soul searching in that process. But for me, it was just really trying to take the time to understand what my priorities were. Understanding that I didn't have to be all things to all people. That I really had to play to my own strengths and discover what those were. So you mentioned those tools like Enneagram and StrengthsFinder. I actually took StrengthsFinder. It was probably about 3 years ago. And what's interesting about StrengthsFinder is their approach is to focus on your strengths, find those strengths, discover what they are, and then really lean in and say, if these strengths are the things that you enjoy the most and that motivate you the most, then this is what you need to be doing, right? And so that's kind of their philosophy. So I think that is part of the reason that really helped me focus and prioritize. And that prioritization, I think, was also a huge key. Finding what was really important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what I think of in these situations, Carlos, is as a lot of people don't know themselves as much as they might think they do, right? And what that took from you was a deeper understanding of your own self and an honesty about your strengths and weaknesses. And what I like about what you're saying in StrengthsFinder, which I've never taken that test before, is that it focuses on the strengths, which I'm always a fan of. Focus on the strengths. The weaknesses, don't focus on those so much. Just don't do any more of that. Whatever you're weak at, focus on doing more of what you're strong at. It sounds like that's what StrengthsFinder's doing.
Yeah, it really helped me prioritize and focus. And I ended up going back to school, getting my master's degree. I just graduated.
Congratulations! That's a big deal. Yeah. Last week.
Yeah, just graduated, just finished all my master's degree.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And so I now have a master's degree in public policy.
Okay.
And that really took a lot of focus as well. That discipline of academic work, and I actually discovered that I really enjoyed academic work quite a bit, and again, the sort of research aspect of it, the writing aspect of it, and the focus aspect of it. You've really got to, put everything aside when you're working on a research project, because it's going to take all of your time and energy to finish it, And so having that discipline and having that focus really helped me a lot as well.
I mean, that's a big shift from what I knew previously of Carlos and of you. And it is that you were just like, you were like omnipresent. I think I was too at that time. But it's good to hear that you've gotten focused and that you focused on your strengths and that you're much more happy as you.
I am. I had to learn that too. Is I thought that being the social butterfly and being the networker and being the guy who was everywhere, could solve every problem, and that kind of thing I thought that's where it was at, and I discovered that I'm not that 25-year-old anymore.
Right.
So at 43 now, as I think that's a function of it too. As you get older, you start to realize, okay, what's really meaningful, what's really important, what are really my priorities, what legacy am I going to leave behind, what does my family know now that I have an almost 13-year-old daughter? What is she looking at? When she looks at me, So I felt that. Going back and finishing my college degree, and even going further and pushing myself to see how far I could go with it, was really an example to her too.
For sure.
Follow your dreams and follow your passions and focus, and just having teaching her all those lessons just by what I choose to prioritize.
Yeah, I mean, kids change your life. I didn't know that until 18 months ago.
Right.
But everything changed. Everything. Yeah. Fundamentally, core, just my entire life shifted, and then my perceptions on the world. And I stopped swearing, Carlos. I don't drink anymore. I'm just kind of wild. And in this child is really what I'm like. I have a responsibility in a way that I never had before. And I can only imagine at 13 years old, and I remember when your daughter was born. So, wow.
Right. Yeah.
Time goes by fast, boy.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So you're working on a book. You're going to be published. This is your first. You just signed a contract for a book, I hear?
I did. Yeah. So it was
this is exciting. Tell us a little more about this book.
Yeah. It's so cool the way the world works. The same day that I turned in my capstone project for a master's degree was also the same day that I turned in my publishing contract. So that was really cool. And the book, again, kind of leveraging all the community work that I've done over the years, and all of the public policy stuff that I've done at school. The book, it's called The Victory of Greenwood. Mm-hmm. And it's about the Greenwood neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and kind of the history of it. And I'm taking a more, instead of like a historical approach, I'm taking more of a biographical approach. Mm-hmm. Because I think that it's important that we see the people of Greenwood as people, Yeah. And I think the narrative of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma has been incomplete. And so I'm hoping to kind of tell a more complete story of Greenwood.
Time out. So
yeah, totally.
Just for our audience, they're all over the world. Greenwood is part of what is known now as the Tulsa Massacre, right? Yeah. Where literally hundreds of African Americans were killed, bombings from air, shot, 1921. A great stain on America's history, and it's starting to come back, and they're even looking to the mayor G.T. Bynum's looking to check and see if there are mass graves as well, right?
Yeah.
moving forward. And one last thing, Carlos, and I'll pass it back to you, is we had Margot Gray on here. I'm sure you know her. Her brother was the chief of the Osage Nation. She's now been elected into a position where she's managing mineral rights, which equals something like $16 billion mineral rights under land that Osage owned. But interestingly, her grandfather, I think it was her great grandfather, maybe, was tied to was murdered, and then the FBI investigation, and now is tied to Scorsese's and not Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio starring in Killing of Flower Moon. Is that what it's called?
The Killers of the Flower.
Which was happening at the same time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I'll tell you an interesting story. The way I found out about Greenwood and about the massacre in 21 was working as a freelancer for Margot's brother.
Ah, okay.
Louis Gray. Yeah. So Louis Gray.
Of course.
Huh?
Of course you were working with Margot's brother.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was a great experience. He was the managing editor of the Oklahoma Eagle, which is the African American paper in North Tulsa.
Right.
And they had asked me to design a special issue for, at the time, this was 2001, and this was the first official report that was made after the massacre in 21 to investigate everything that happened and sort of do a survey of the buildings that were destroyed and kind of put some numbers behind it, put some history behind it. The research from the report ended up, taking a really long time, a couple of years, if I remember right. But Louis Gray asked me to help design a special issue for the Eagle. And I said yes, I took the job. I had never done print design before that. And so I went out and bought a couple of books on how to do print design. Learned. Never
ever give up.
Right. Fake it till you make it type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned how to do print design, and we worked on that project for about 3 months. And we built that special issue about 1921. And so during doing all the design work and doing all the layout work, of course, we were researching articles and selecting which photos to put in and all that stuff. So that kind of story of Greenwood, it's building, through the 1860s, 70s, all the way up until 1921. The neighborhood's prosperity, and then its destruction in 1921. And the fact that the community rebuilt it after 1921 was just a fascinating piece of history to me. And so I just, ever since 2001, I've been collecting books and articles and things like that. And so now I finally I'm getting to do something with all that stuff that I've collected over the years. So it's been great.
That's fantastic. Congratulations, Carlos. Have you caught this Netflix movie or show series that's loosely based upon the Tulsa riots? At least starts with it, and then it's like Tulsa in the future. Have you watched that at all?
It's The Watchmen, right, on HBO?
I don't. I watched it a couple times, and then I just lost interest. But I was curious if you what your thoughts were.
The Watchmen is a graphic novel by Alan Moore, and it really is interesting the way HBO kind of approached it. The series begins with the massacre in 21.
It's done really well to the point of you're just like, whoa, this is awful.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what really brought the story, brought that event to the national attention. Mm-hmm. And so it is an interesting time for Tulsa because we sort of now have a national spotlight on us. There have been people from all over the world come to Tulsa to learn more about Greenwood and learn more about 1921 and what happened. And but again, I think that the story, the narrative that we have as a community has been incomplete because we sort of think that Yeah, that happened, and then nothing's happened with Greenwood ever since, which is just completely untrue. Greenwood was rebuilt, and it actually thrived well up into the late 1960s.
They built this inner disposal loop.
Right, that's what. So if you really want to look at like what really destroyed Greenwood, that's what it was. It was
yeah, I know. Hey, let me ask you something, because this is important, and this is it correlates back to the questions we're getting from people who are texting those questions in or coming live. There's a resilience that the people of Greenwood have. There's a resilience in this tragedy to triumph. I think of Dwayne Maget, comes to mind all of a sudden. What do you think are the characteristics of those people who grew up and have been part of Greenwood, and what is it about them that keeps going and has more resilience than most people? Have you noticed anything in your research or your conversations that would be something that would like give some nuggets about how you just stay strong and resilient in difficulty?
That really is a great question. Like I said, I really am taking more of a biographical approach with this book.
Mm-hmm.
I was inspired by another book called Black Fortunes, and it's written by Shamari Wills. And he tells the story of the first African Americans to reach the status of millionaire after the Reconstruction. So we're talking about after the Civil War. The African Americans were freed from slavery. So after that time, who are the first six African Americans to reach the status of being a millionaire? So in 1860, if you're a millionaire, that would be the equivalent of being like a multi-billionaire right now, right? Like
right.
It would be the equivalent of being like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or that type of level, right? Or Bill Gates or somebody like that. So, so in this book, one of the and he does it in a very biographical way. So you get to know these people. It's almost like you're with these people, So it's very well written. And one of the people that Shamari Wills profiles is O.W. Gurley, and O.W. Gurley is the founder of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And what I find interesting about the story of O.W. Gurley is he took every tiny little advantage that he had, and he was able to leverage it to get him one step further to his goal. So I'll give you an example. He ended up being assigned to work under President Grover Cleveland's administration. And I think he had like a position at the U.S. Postal Service, right? It wasn't any big deal, right? But just the fact that he worked for the president gave him a lot of, today we would call it street cred, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't just any random person. He had on his resume, I've worked for the president, right?
Yeah.
So he was able to take that and during the time of the land run in Oklahoma, he was able to buy his 40 acres because he knew exactly where to be, exactly when to be, the forms to fill out, all that stuff, right? Because he had worked for the administration that had created all that.
Right.
So he just took every single little nugget and leveraged it to his advantage. In order to like get one step further. There's another profile that I have just finished of Mabel Little, and her father, if I'm not mistaken, he inherited a cow.
That's a big deal.
But he was able to take that cow and just keep building on that inheritance. In that time, that was wealth, right? Yeah. So you take one cow and you use it, you leverage it to build your farm and to, and just keep going one step further,
Still the same, man, in Africa and other countries, and I'm sure in some parts of America where it's more rural. So yeah, cows are a great asset.
Yeah. And so then, then all, over time, he was able to kind of build up his wealth, and Mabel Little learned from that, and she did the same thing. She came to Tulsa with $50, or not. She came to Tulsa, Oklahoma with $1.25 in her purse. But there again, if you look at Mabel Little's story, she was able to take that $1.25 and, find a job, save a little bit of money, she bought a 3-room house. And then her and her husband, one house, he had a shoe shine business, 1 room. And then the other room, she had a hair salon. And then they lived in the 3rd room. Right. So even just that one little house that had 3 rooms in it, they were able to leverage that. And how do we build on it? How do we create more from what we have, And so the more I look at all the stories of the successful people in Greenwood, I kind of keep finding that over and over again.
No, it's extremely entrepreneurial. Period. Yeah. And for our audience, I mean, there's a mindset that's different.
Yeah.
In people of Greenwood than other places, and I've noticed it.
I fully believe that.
What do you think helps them have more grit, more determination, more drive, more intestinal fortitude, more to go, and not just sit there and say my situation sucks and that sucks and I'm in a bad situation and just stew in it instead of like, yeah, it's a bad situation. I got $1.25. I've had $1.25, by the way, and I had the same choice, right? Do I choose to put gas in the tank to go get a gig, or do I go buy some top ramen noodle?
Right.
What did I choose? I chose the gig. So, it's like what causes us and what causes them to have that kind of thought process where I'm just going to throw out that $1.20 and see if I can get more money from that.
Yeah.
What is that, Carlos? What do you got? What do you mean?
That's a great question. A few years ago, I was working with a team on a music documentary. It's called Green Country Red Dirt. And we interviewed the Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey, who I'm sure you know. Great band, jazz band.
Beautiful.
And so Jacob Fred had a very interesting thing to say about Greenwood, and they had a very interesting thing to say about what was going on in music at the time. And you had all these great musicians, Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. You had all this very interesting jazz fusing with country and jazz fusing with other styles of music at the time. And what Jacob Fred was talking about is the universe. There's a universal law, right? It's one of the laws of physics, right? That every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Perfect. And so part of the thing about music and the healing power of music is that we are able to, and this is what the blues are all about. We're able to take pain and turn it into something beautiful. That's the entire sort of origin of blues and jazz music. Is something horrible has happened, or maybe your heart is broken, or you're taking your pain, your blues, and you're turning it into something beautiful, and you're expressing that to others, and they're able to relate to that. And that's kind of the power of art and creativity and music. And what Jacob Fred was talking about was, here was an event that was so tragic, so painful, that you had to have an equal amount of beauty and art and creativity and creation that would have come as a result of that pain and destruction. So it's really an interesting conversation with them, and I almost got, kind of philosophical about, yes, you had this tragedy, but at the same time, you have a lot of a lot of creativity and a lot of art and a lot of and entrepreneurism. This entrepreneurism is art. So I think that's a big part of it is just that taking something and turning it into something beautiful.
Yeah, I mean that is, and it's more of a cathartic process, and it's a releasing and a letting go process. Then in this situation, and I reflect upon my experiences in the last couple years working in refugee settlements, Carlos. Totally transform your life. The hardest work I've ever done, emotionally, physically, spiritually, just really rough. But all of a sudden, I started writing songs. And the first one, Bootstrap Life, and then they close is Keep On Keeping On, and partnering with Barrios Kasu in the refugee camp of Nacho Valley. And what I realized talking to you is that it was a cathartic process because I was so moved by the realities of what the most underserved people on the planet are having to go through. And so the process of writing the song actually may have been more of an exercise of letting go the pain that I was experiencing with those people. Fascinating. Yeah. And so all the songs that I'm hearing in my head right now are different because that was a process for somebody to let go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And but Greenwood has carried on, and the Gap Band in the 70s, music still like it's one of the greatest places to go. Used to be go see live music. Now you can go see it online. I'm sure that people are streaming their music, but just musically speaking, and then entrepreneurially. So what you're saying is their resilience comes from a combination of an entrepreneurial mindset with a highly creative, artistic side blending.
Yeah,
that gives them greater resilience.
And that, and again, just that aspect of like, just like you said, you have a choice, right? You can, basically take what you've got and you can either build on it or you can just sort of settle in. And I think that, the people who sort of learn to kind of go with the flow and go with their gut instincts and go with the sort of what the universe is pulling you toward. I think those learning that skill and learning that again, like for me, it was that journey of prioritization, of focus. All right, what am I really? What are my real priorities, and what do I really want to leave behind? It really is kind of going about going with the flow,
Mm-hmm. What I talk about with people is when you're in the flow, it doesn't mean it's easier. It may be even harder, but you're not having to work as hard to move faster forward or get to where you want to go. It's a flow, right? It's the flow, and flow.
Yeah.
Versus not, because I've been in situations where I'm banging my head against the wall and banging this way, banging against the wall, and I'm like, why isn't this working? And then it's right there in front of me, but I'm so thick-skulled sometimes I can't see it, and then I'm not in the flow. Yeah. So I've got some techniques that I use. What technique do you use to make sure that you don't get distracted or ignore the flow when it shows up and that's the direction to go, even if it's not the direction you've been going? How do you get yourself into a flow?
Well, I think part of it, there's a I'm gonna see if I can try to remember the title. I think it's The Art of Doing Nothing.
Mm-hmm. The Art of Doing Nothing. There's another book by Jay Ogilvy called Goallessness. Yeah, there's another book by Jay Ogilvy called Goallessness, which is a similar type of.
And so the premise of it is that all of our lives are just so chaotic and busy and just we've got text messages and emails and Facebook and social media and websites, and we got all these things to answer, And I think that it can really be distracting, right? So I think that we have this kind of impulse that we think that if we keep busy, it'll be more productive. And I've found it's actually the exact opposite. When I slow down, when I make room on my calendar, and I do this, I actually, in my Google Calendar, I'll block off time, and like, this is time to read and reflect and just think, and not be working on a project or thinking that I have to, answer 100 emails. So it is important, obviously, to structure time to be productive, but I think it's also just as equally important to set some time aside to really be reflective as well. And I know that's helped me a lot. And I think that sort of helps you kind of ground yourself again.
And what better time to go slow to go fast than right now? Because we can all slow down. I think. You know what I noticed though, and I'm always the one where there's chaos, there's a whirlwind, and I'm just like completely still, right? It's calmness in the storm, and but and this show, I believe, came to me in this concept where we're exploring here, and this adventure that, thanks for being on with us, is a direct outcome of slowing down, being quiet, reflecting, meditating. I was following Deepak Chopra's 21 Days of Abundance meditations. By the way, I'm doing them again. They're really fantastic. For anybody out there, they're just wonderful. And it just awoke me to. I woke up one day. I called Amy. Okay, Amy, here's what we're doing. And it was that slowness that awoke this new opportunity. The challenge I find within this, Carlos, is now I've ramped it up again. Okay, now it's busy time again.
Yeah,
and which is nice in some ways, but it's balancing it in some ways as well. I think, and we won't go into that, but the notion that you're pointing out, this whole idea of slow it down, listen to your inner voice, right? That's what you're saying. Listen to your inner voice. It's working in your subconscious, is working for your best interest to help you be more successful. So here's the question: how do you listen to that and act upon it and not ignore it? Right? I know that it's too easy just to ignore it. Like, how do you not ignore that?
Yeah.
People hear it. I know. It's like people that hear it and then they're like,
yeah,
no, I can't do that. And then they're back to just doing what the regular routine instead of taking bold steps and following that intuitive hunch that's going to help you, fulfill your life with more meaning.
Yeah. I think for me, a big part of that is sort of getting out of my own head, right? So you have your focus time, you have your time of reflection, in your case, meditation, yoga, whatever works for you, prayer. I find that gardening really helps me a lot.
Nature.
Turn off all the devices and go outside and get my hands dirty, literally.
Yeah.
And when you're working in a garden, there's nothing there. It's just you and the plants, right, and the animals and the bugs and the worms and all that. So that helps me kind of calm down and slow down. But then how do I take the lessons from that?
Take action. This is the key. I think everybody gets them.
I find for me that I rely a lot on my friends and family for that. Because the challenge that usually happens with me is I think, well, gee, am I really good enough to be a writer? Am I really good enough to have a master's degree? Am I really good enough to work on this grand community project that's going to help, feed, 8,000 people, which we did through Code for Tulsa, one of the projects, the community projects that we worked on. That's I get in my own way, and I kind of get into this headspace of like, well, I'm not good enough to do that. Even if I might have the idea, I think, well, I'm not the guy to do that. I'm not good enough or smart enough or, whatever enough. But I find that as I talk to friends and tough family and kind of get their perspective, and I get out of my own head, that's when I'm able to say, okay, well, maybe this project really is possible, and maybe I can do this, and maybe I can build a team around me to work on this. And you know, my master's degree project was a team project, and even this book, Meg Sutherland is helping me edit. Ann Patton has been a great advisor for me on the book, a great mentor. And the book is being published by All Souls Unitarian Church. So the head pastor there, Marlon Lavenhar. I don't know if you remember.
Marlon's still there. So say hi to Marlon when you see him there.
Yeah, I will. So he's been a great, you know, sort of sounding board. So the more people I have around me and that sense of a team, then I get to a place where, you know, I know, okay, there's other people that've got my back. There's other people who believe in me, who want me to succeed, who are helping me, you know, and who are filling in the weaknesses, right? So I'm focusing on my strengths and what I find that I enjoy best and do best. But then the things that I'm not good at, you know, I've learned to sort of, you know, bring people on to the team that can help me fill in those gaps and make that project successful.
It's beautiful. I mean, we did an exercise earlier, what holds me back and how to overcome what holds me back. We get a lot of questions from people around this, right? One of the first things I was saying is, you're not good enough. Like, I get that sometimes too, historically, not so much now, but it's because of practice, right? Mm-hmm. And so how many years have you been practicing that you are good enough and you can do it? Not to sound too much like Small, what is that guy on Saturday Night Live? But, you know, like, what do you, like, my mother was on. My mother's been coming. It's going to be on every Sunday. She was on last Sunday. Insight from Sean's mom. Fantastic. Next Sunday. You don't want to miss it out there. She's giving affirmations. And my mother is the affirmation queen. Like, it's all over the house. And she trained me. I've got sketchbooks. They're like, I'm 9 years old. I'm writing affirmations, right? And it reprograms your brain. What affirmations are you telling yourself to overcome that untrue belief you have that you're not good enough, that was taught to you when you were much younger, and it's not accurate at all, right? How are you overcoming that limitation, or what's holding you back? What do you say to yourself?
That's interesting. You know, for me, what works for me a lot is reminding myself of who I'm doing this work for. Mm-hmm. And again, sort of getting out of my own head, and trying to focus on the bigger picture. Who am I doing this for? Why am I working on this project? Is it, well, you know, whether it's something, I've done a lot of work in the food security space, trying to make it easier. If you know anything about the U.S., it's enormously difficult to apply for things like food benefits, or you know, WIC, which is a program for women, infants, and children to help mothers raise their kids. But these government benefits are incredibly difficult to apply for, and a lot of the work that we do with Code for America is try to make those processes easier. And in those difficult times when the work gets hard, or when we're running into a problem, or we're running into a challenge, or we're running into something where we think, you know, we can't do this, you know, I always kind of try to go back to, like, who are we doing this for? Who's really benefiting from this project? Who's, you know, and I try to think about them as much as I can. And I find that that's what really kind of moves me forward, keeps me going, helps me kind of get those breakthroughs.
You know, I love you, Carlos. I'm just reminded of that, because you are putting a dent in the universe. You're an actual example of Pata-2 in action. And one of the reasons we get along so well. And you're always working to improve yourself and then help other people along the way, which is just so commendable, and just can be a difficult road or journey sometimes, right?
Sure.
And, you know, we had a similar discussion with Mortaza Zaidi. He's like the Elon Musk of Pakistan. Been working with him for years, building the ecosystem there in Pakistan, and he's just a great friend like you. But I was asking him he starts up and he runs a lot of businesses. He's got a lot of businesses. He just started some hotels. He's running a electric car company, all challenging right now. But one of the things I was asking him, I'm like, what is it that's driving you to do all this? Why are you doing this? And what keeps you going? And his response was very similar to yours. And that is, it was about what the growth in terms of his mind. So from an entrepreneurial aspect, he wasn't looking at one hotel, the first hotel they're starting. He's looking at the 20 hotels he sees in the future. In your case, it's the hundreds of thousands of women and children who benefit from an easier process to submit for their WIC support. So there's something to this, because I do the same. Anytime that people get crazy around me, I'm like, well, we could go here. And they're like, shouldn't we focus on right here first? I'm like, sure, but we can go here. It drives me. It motivates me. I realize, I'm realizing. So what do you have similar motivations like with your book? And you're like, what's your imagination like? It's your first book of many books? Or do you have a similar instinct and mindset that says it's not about the money as much as it is about the impact, the growth, the thing I'm doing? I'll pause.
Yeah, I hear you for sure. I mean, we've talked about, man, we need to make this into a podcast. We need to create a documentary film. We need to create this. We need to do that. We've had all these sort of branched out, ideas, and I keep kind of, again, coming back, so who is this book for? Who's really going to benefit? And for me, the whole reason for me even writing this book is, as a community, Tulsa does not have a shared narrative about Greenwood, about North Tulsa. And we always talk about racial healing. Like, we need to heal this community. We had, one of the worst shootings, Terrence Crutcher, was fatally shot by a police officer right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And again, Oklahoma kind of put itself into this national narrative of what is happening with these police shootings, and so then from that, everybody started talking about, well, we have to heal this city. We have to heal our racial divides and things like that. And I kept coming back to this idea of, if we don't have a shared narrative of our own city, then how can you even start the conversation of healing when the white community has one story about Greenwood and the Black community has another story about Greenwood, and they're not the same story?
I know,
right? So I don't have any sort of delusions of grandeur that my one book is going to heal all of Tulsa. That's ridiculous. But the one thing I can do is, through this book and through these biographies and through the stories of these people of Greenwood, what I can do is shine a spotlight on the truth and what really did happen in Greenwood. And then people can do with that what they may. But until the truth is out, I think we're not really going to make a lot of progress, right? And so for me, it's narrative, it's telling the truth, and it's unveiling this story that for the most part, Tulsa does not know this history of this community.
Well, it's a beautiful thing you're doing, Carlos, and can't wait to read this book. And I'm so happy to hear how focused you are. Thanks for sharing your techniques for getting focused on how to build on your strengths, and also overcoming mental blocks that are holding you back. You've been a great guest, and we're so grateful. Thank you, Carlos.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll see you again soon.
All right.
When travel begins again.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
In person. All right. We'll see you, Carlos. Thank you.